Okay, we got Ongi's charbroil gas grill, and we're working on smoking it. So let me show you what we got going on here. We've got our brisket, which looks really dark and has a crust on it because we seared it on the flames first. We seared it for about 5 minutes on each side. And these are our, this is hickory smoke inside aluminum foil. We heated it on the gas burner, hot enough to start smoking. And then we put the brisket on the opposite side of the grill on the top grate to try to keep it cool. Right now, the grill says a little over 200 degrees. I'd say the grill is probably 190, 200 degrees right now. And I'm going to show you the view from the back so you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Let's see if the camera will adjust here. You've got your brisket up here on the rack, and you've got your smoke coming from the aluminum foil on the other side. And the reason we do this is because we don't want that brisket hot at all. We wanted it right at 200 degrees, or that's how I prefer it. So the smoke and the brisket are on opposite sides, and that's how we're doing it on a gas grill. To give you a look again, brisket, smoke, and to get the wood chip started, we actually used this burner on the side, and the burner on the side got it hot enough, and then we transferred it from this burner right over here to the very right side burner. So remember, the entire grill is, all the burners aren't on. The only burner that's on is on the right side, and it's on low, and it's only to keep the aluminum foil hot enough to keep those wood chips smoking. And that's how we smoke a brisket on a gas grill. And we'll give you the next step here in about an hour or two. Okay, guys, I'm going to show you wood chips. We got soaking here. We're using hickory wood chips, and I'm going to show you how to make your little aluminum foil packet. Andrew, can you help me record for me? Alright, I'm going to show you how I'll make my aluminum foil packet for smoking. Now you can go to the store and buy the fancy little metal boxes with the holes in them. They're nice, except a lot of the times the metal warps, so they only last like maybe a year or so. But it's really easy. Just soak your wood chips. Like I said, this is hickory. Make a little pile here, and then just wrap it up into a packet. It's really simple. Fold the edges over, and then you just, it doesn't have to be perfect. Make a little packet, and then you take a fork or something, and then just put holes at the top. That way the smoke can rise out of the other things. And the bottom, I usually don't put holes in the bottom because you don't want the wood chips to catch on fire. So now that my wood packet is finished, I'm going to leave it outside, and whenever my wood chips are finished burning, they're on the grill now, I'm going to put them back on that burner, let them get really hot, let it start smoking, and then I'll put it back inside the grill to continue smoking brisket. These gas grills, you have like a side burner that has a griddle on it for cooking like whatever you want on the side of your grill. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take off the side piece, or the griddle, I don't know what you want to call it. We're going to take it off. We're going to take our packet that has soaked hickory wood, which is on the other clip. Put it down on your burner, and then put it on high, light it, and then keep it directly on the flames. Now the key to getting your wood chip started is, even though it's going to start smoking early, don't put it inside your grill until it's smoked for, say, 5 or 10 minutes till it gets really good and hot, because a lot of what you see is going to be water vapor too, because it's soaked wood chips. So we're going to put it on the gas burner, let it smoke for about 5 minutes till the wood chips are hot enough to burn on their own. That's the key, is you want them to burn on their own. And then when it's finished, we can transfer it over here to the right side of our gas grill. Now right now I've got the right burner on low, and it's just hot enough to keep those wood chips burning and to keep it at 200 degrees. That's it.
Okay.
Alright guys, so we've had the hickory wood chips that have been soaked, they're wrapped in foil, and I have them on the side burner on the flame, and it's probably been about 3 or 4 minutes, so I think it's hot enough to transfer over to the main portion of the grill where our wonderful brisket, which is a 9-pound biscuit by the way, is sitting. So It's hot as hell, so I would not recommend picking this up by hand. I'm going to transfer it to this burner over here. And like I said before, this is the only burner that's on, is the right side burner. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it on high. That way I can keep this hot enough to keep smoking. I can go ahead and turn this one off because I don't need it right now. And close the lid. And that burner is going to keep those wood chips hot enough to continue to smoke. Right now there's not a lot of smoke coming off there. Give it about 5 minutes and it'll start coming up because this burner's on high. Close it back up. We're still at 200 degrees. And I'd say we'll smoke it for another 30 minutes and then we'll wrap it in foil and put it in the oven. And I'll show you that step when I'm done.
Okay.
Alright guys, it looks like we're finished smoking. Now the brisket has a nice little bark on it. You can see where all the rub is kind of dried up. It's still moist from the fat, but it's got a great bark. And we're finished smoking it. We've smoked it for about 2 hours at 200 degrees. So I'm pretty confident that this brisket's ready to finish. Now, because we're using a gas grill, and because we don't have the best equipment, the best thermometers, and because we're doing this at home, and we're amateurs and we're inexperienced, we're going to do this the really cheap way, which is in the oven. So we're putting in aluminum foil. Now, I've heard a lot of things about putting in aluminum foil, and there's a nickname for this process with the brisket. It's called the Texas Cheat. And the reason it's called the Texas Cheat is because we're not putting in the grill, we're actually putting it in the oven. And the job of the aluminum foil is to keep it sealed so all that moisture stays inside so that when it's in the oven it won't dry out. So this part of the process is just, you got to wrap it up as best you can and keep it as tight as you can so that you won't lose any moisture. So I'm going to just tuck the corners in and just keep it as tight and keep the best seal I can. I don't want to put any holes in it because every hole you put in it, steam's going to come out of it. You don't want to lose your steam. You want it to stay nice and moist on the inside. So I'm going to continue to wrap it so that there's no possible way that any of that moisture can escape. And now we have our finished product. We've got a 9-pound brisket that's been seared on both sides for 5 minutes. It's been smoked at 200 degrees and a gas grill with hickory wood chips for 2 hours at 200 degrees, and now it's ready to go in the oven. I've heard a lot of things about how long to cook it, and they say, most people say about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour 20 minutes for every pound. This is a 9-pound brisket. But what I tell you to do is just check your brisket frequently and use a meat thermometer to make sure it's cooked. And I'm thinking we'll probably cook it to 160 to 180 degrees, and that's all personal preference. Everything when it comes to brisket is personal preference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the oven for 8 hours at about 225 degrees, and it's been in the oven at 200, or in the grill at 200 degrees for about 2 hours. So the total cook time is going to end up being 10 hours at about 225 degrees. I'm going to use my meat thermometer, and if it's not finished, I'll cook it for another hour or 2 hours, but it should be done. And we'll get back with you when it's done and see how it looks. Alright guys, we're here in Katy, Texas, and we're finishing up the brisket that we started on a gas grill. I'd like to let you know that the preference here is to pair a barbecue brisket with a Shiner Bock beer. Okay? So 8 hours later, this is 8 hours into it at 225 degrees, we're going to take the brisket that's been wrapped in foil out of the oven. 225 degrees is just barely hot enough to grab with your hands, but if you're a little boy or a little girl, I wouldn't recommend it. Use some mitts. So we're going to take our trusty meat thermometer, make sure this is safe to eat, poke it in the center, and let's check it out. We want to make sure it's safe to eat. The minimum, I'd say, is about 160 degrees, but I like 180 degrees. That's what I want. Right now, we're at 180 degrees, so this brisket is safe to eat. Now, the one thing you have to remember about a brisket after you take it out of the oven is don't cut it immediately. Let it rest for a few hours, because if I unwrap this brisket and I cut it, not only are the juices going to fall all over the floor and all over the counter, but you're going to lose all of the flavor, all of the juice if you cut it immediately. So we're going to give it a couple hours, and then we're going to slice it. And the other thing you have to remember is that there's a certain way to slice a brisket, because you have to remember that it's more than one muscle. And the grain of the muscle is in different directions. So you have to cut it very carefully. And we'll get back to you in the next video and show you how to cut the brisket once it's done. So About 3 hours later, we want the brisket completely cool so that we can cut it. So the one thing you got to remember is that a brisket is several cuts of muscle. So you have to separate the muscle and then cut it. And you want to cut it against the grain. So what I'm going to do is find this layer of fat here and separate these two pieces of muscle. So I'm kind of like pressing against it so that it naturally separate. But you can see that we've got two completely different cuts of muscle that we're separating. Now I've got a little bit here that's kind of on the side, but probably should be on that side, but it'll be fine. So basically we have one cut here, we have one cut here, and what you're going to do is you're going to want to trim a little bit of the fat. Not too much, but just some of the excess fat that's, a little bit too much there. So I just trimmed off a little bit of that excess fat. And now you can see we've got a nice piece of cut of meat with just a little bit of fat on it. I'm going to set this aside for now. So I'm going to take this cut right here, make sure that the fat, there's only a little bit of fat here, so that's going to be completely fine. I'm going to check this side and see if this is the fat side. This is the muscle side, so that means this is the fat side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graze the top of it, make sure I trim off some of that fat. And you can tell where the fat ends and the meat starts. You can see it right here. I'm going to cut that, set it aside so that I can eat these scraps later. Go ahead and trim off a little bit more of that fat. So that should be perfect. That should be all the fat we're going to trim off of there. And I know there's a little bit of good meat there, but trust me, I'm going to eat this later. So we set this piece aside, take this piece, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut completely against the grain. That means that if you cut with the grain, you're going to have long, stringy pieces that are really chewy and hard to eat. And that's why it's very important that you cut this properly. So I'm going to look at the grain, and because the grain is moving this way, I'm going to cut it completely perpendicular. So I've got a burnt end here. We call these burnt ends, by the way. And those are the pieces with a lot of seasoning, and basically it looks like a burnt end. We're going to slice it thin, and just go ahead and set it aside. It's nice and tender, has a good color, and you can see a nice pink smoke ring on the outside. It's very important that you have a smoke ring.
You got that pan over there.
So I'm going to start putting the good meat inside the pan so I can refrigerate it overnight because we don't plan on eating this till tomorrow. And I'm going to continue to cut against the grain. And the most important part about cutting a brisket is the fact that you have to remember there's two muscles and they're going in different directions. So, remember to cut against the grain. Jesus Christ, this is so tender. I can fucking clearly this thing wrong. This is